weir barrages and layout of a diversion work, and causes of failures of weirs, and then about the silt ejectors and silt excluders, followed by creep theories we were discussing in the past few classes. Bly's creep theory, Lane's weighted creep theory, then what are the limitations of the Bly's creep theory, then Kosla's theory and Kosla's method of independent variables for finding the pressures at different points for weirs on permeable foundation, along with the correction factors, correction for mutual interference of pile, correction for the slope and so on. Then exit gradient, then about the upstream, downstream cutoffs or sheet piles and how they will be provided, and the need of providing a launching apron. Today's discussion, we will be taking up a topic on the vertical drop weir, the design principles of a vertical drop weir, which is laid on a permeable foundation using the creep theories. So the design principles of weirs on permeable foundation using the creep theory. More particularly, we will be discussing about the vertical drop weir. We know the definition of a weir, a solid structure which may be constructed across a stream or a river so that the water may be diverted into the canals. From the stream or the river, the water will be diverted into the canals because there will be rise of water level by constructing this solid masonry or a concrete wall across the stream. So the picture provides you a vertical or a weir, a vertical drop weir or a weir which is constructed here, and because there is a weir wall which is obstructing the flow, and the water will be stored on the upstream side. Okay, so the weir wall which is provided, with certain piers, and there is a roadway over it, and the crest gates or the shutters will be operated by means of this mechanism. Okay. So in a 3D view, a vertical drop weir may appear like this. So this is a weir wall, body of the weir, which is resting on the foundation, on the upstream side and also on the downstream side. It is extended for certain length, because the wall is constructed on the upstream side. The water is rising. However, the excess water over and above the crest level, is flowing to the downstream portion. Okay, so this is a vertical drop weir. In its section, if you see the vertical drop weir once again, when the weir wall is constructed, over the top of this weir wall, there may be crest shutters or crest gates which may be provided, or sometimes there may be a weir wall with no crest gate also. So both the cases possible. So you have a weir wall resting, and this weir wall may have a crest gate or may not have a crest gate. If a crest shutter or a crest gate is provided corresponding to the height of this crest gate, the water level rises. So this is the pond level here. Okay. However, on the upstream side and downstream side, there will be a pucca concrete floor which is provided. Pucca floor or a concrete floor is provided where the weir wall is directly resting. So not only just below the weir wall, but on the upstream side and the downstream side, it will be extended. Also, there will be sheet piles or cutoffs which are provided at the upstream portion, at the downstream portion also. Following this concrete floor, you will be having upstream and downstream talus portion. This talus is provided on the upstream side as well as on the downstream side. So we try to look at the design principles for a vertical drop weir. Means we need to arrive at various levels for all these components, the thicknesses at different sections, lengths of different components. For example, for a weir wall, what is the top width, what is the bottom width? These are all the information which is required to be designed. So this is a design of a vertical drop weir. So a masonry weir here shown here. This is the masonry weir. So the weir wall, which is resting on a masonry foundation, which may have a vertical cutoff or a sheet pile on the upstream side as well as on the downstream side, followed by the talus portions. The talus portion is provided here. Okay. Once again, if the crust gate is provided, the pond level rises. If the crust gate is not provided here, the pond level will be directly at the crust level. This will be the level. Okay. So weir wall, crest level, and by providing the shutter, you have the pond level at a different level. So this weir wall is resting on a foundation on a apron, which may be having upstream and downstream cutoffs. So this is all the impervious apron which is provided. The length of this impervious apron extends downstream of the weir wall to certain length, also on the upstream of the weir wall to certain length. So this will be extended to certain lengths. So during our design, we need to verify and check how much length it should be extended on the upstream side, how much length it should be extended on the downstream side. If these piles are provided, cutoffs are provided, what should be the depth of the cutoff at this portion? What should be the depth of the cutoff at this portion also is to be arrived at. So the top width of the weir wall, the bottom width of the weir wall anyway are to be found. Apart from that, we need to arrive at several levels, and the depths of these cutoffs also have to be arrived. So in a nutshell, for any vertical drop weir, we will be calculating the levels, we will be calculating the thicknesses, we will be calculating the upstream and downstream apron lengths. Also, we will be calculating the upstream and downstream sheet pile depths, how much depth the upstream sheet pile, how much depth the downstream sheet pile are to be provided. After these aprons, the impervious apron portions, we need to provide certain talus portions. So what should be the typical structure of this talus and the upstream and downstream side also we need to see. So the design criteria for the vertical drop weir will have the following steps to calculate the various elevations, various levels like pond level, crest level, bed level, and those levels are to be arrived at. Then weir wall is to be designed. The moment we say weir wall, not only arriving at the dimensions at the top width or the bottom width, we need to look at its safety also. So it should be safe against various forces which may be acting on the weir wall. Then the impervious apron portion, what should be the upstream length and downstream length, and what should be the cutoffs to be provided, depths of cutoffs that are to be provided. Then the filters which are provided on the upstream side and downstream. So inverted filters and the talus portion. Finally, the structure which we have designed must be checked for its safety. Maybe by making use of the costless method of independent variables, we can check the section for its safety. Okay, so in this class, we try to discuss about some of the design principles for various components of this vertical drop weir. What data is required for fixing the elevations, the different elevations like pond level, then high flood level, downstream HFL, bed level. So to fix all these levels, what data is required? We require, first of all, the data pertaining to the maximum flood discharge flowing in the stream or in the river. What is the maximum flood discharge? Q, capital Q, meter cube per second. That is required. This is one data requirement. So how do you get this and where do you get this? Immediate next question is, how do you get this and where do we collect this data? So the maximum flood discharge usually may not be available at a particular location where you would like to take up the design of the weir, but a little upstream or downstream portion, there may be certain gauging stations. So by making use of the gauging station data, we'll be able to arrive at the flood discharge. Then high flood level before the construction of the weir. What is the value of HFL when there is no weir, when the water is flowing? What is the maximum flood level that is coming? High flood level, HFL. Similarly, what is the bed level at the downstream of the proposed weir? Then full supply level FSL of the canal taking off from the river, and what is the allowable efflux, and of course the lazy silt factor also is to be assumed appropriately or maybe known from the data available there. So what is this allowable efflux? So if you look at this figure, you'll be able to identify if a pier or a weir wall is constructed, then what will happen? This is the original level of the flood. There will be a rise of level towards the upstream portion. This is HFL. So the difference of these two is the efflux. So when the pier is obstructing the flow of water in the river, the water heads up on the upstream side of the pier. So this rise is maximum during the floods. The amount by which the level rises above the normal level is called efflux. So we need to know this data also. What is the maximum? What is the allowable efflux? Maybe 1 meter, 1.5 meter, how much? This also must be known. This also must be known. In the second figure also, you may observe the same thing, like there will be a rise of water level because of this obstruction in the stream. So this is the original level of a flow of water. Because there is a construction provided, there is a rise of water level, and this is called the efflux. So to start with, we need to go for the hydraulic calculations for fixing various elevations. This is the first step. You need to fix certain elevations. How do we do that? First, find the waterway length. So we make use of the Lacey's regime formula, which we already studied in our water resources engineering 1. L, the length of waterway, is equal to 4.75 root Q. Q is the maximum flood flow, the flood discharge, which we already collected that information. So you get the length of the waterway is equal to 4.75 root Q. The length which is calculated from the above formula may be reduced for boulder reach of the river, may be increased also to about 20 to 40% if the silt factor is about 1. Then once you know L, you can do Q by L will be equal to small q. The discharge per meter width will be equal to small q, Q by L. Small q can be computed. Okay. Then resume cover depth, or using the Lacey's formula once again, R will be equal to 1.35 small q square by F whole to the power 1/3. Small q, the discharge per unit width which you obtained in the previous step. So substituting that value here, q square by F whole to the power 1/3 into 1.35 gives you the resume's cover depth R. And the resume velocity will be V will be equal to small q by R. Velocity head is V square by 2g. Once you get the value of velocity head V square by 2g, then you can fix certain levels. The downstream total energy line level TEL. How do you get this total energy line at the downstream side? So the downstream side total energy line level will be equal to HFL before construction. We already obtained the data. Okay, so this HFL before construction plus the velocity head V square by 2g. So you'll be getting total energy line. Then upstream total energy line will be the downstream total energy line plus the flux value, allowable efflux, maybe 1 meter, whatever is given. So downstream TL plus efflux gives you the upstream TL. And from this upstream TL, if you subtract the velocity V square by 2g, you get the upstream HFL, high flood level. Look at this figure. What is that we have calculated? What is that is given here? So downstream HFL is known to us. To get the total energy line, add V square by 2g. Once you add this V square by 2g, we get the downstream total energy line. From the downstream total energy line, if you add the efflux H, you will get the upstream total energy line minus V square by 2g gives you upstream HFL. In other words, simply downstream HFL, efflux and upstream HFL are related by this H value, flux value. Okay. Then the discharge over the crest of the weir is small q is given already 1.7 into h to the power 3 by 2, where h is the head over the crest. You know the value of q, so substituting that you will get the value of h here. Q is equal to 1.7 h to the power 3 by 2, from where you will be able to obtain the value of the head over the crest. The crest level will be upstream TL since it is known, minus h gives you the crest level. The pond level, which is also will be equal to the RL of the top of the gate, would be equal to full supply level plus loss of head through the regulator. Height of shutters S will be equal to the level of the top of gates minus the crest level. So you have a certain protection for the cover also. So the level of the bottom of the upstream piles will be upstream HFL minus 1.5 R. R is already calculated. The cover depth R has been calculated using this equation. The resumes cover depth has been calculated using this equation, 1.35 Q square by F all to the power 1/3. Once you know the value of R, upstream HFL minus 1.5 R gives you the level of bottom of the upstream pile. Once you know the bottom of the upstream pile, you can know what is the depth of the pile also. You can find the depth of the pile, because depth of bed is the level of the bed is known, the level of the bottom of the upstream pile is known. So you get what is the depth of upstream pile. Similarly, to get the depth of the downstream pile, the level of the bottom of the downstream pile will be downstream HFL minus 2R. Downstream HFL minus 2R. This is upstream HFL minus 1.5R, downstream HFL minus 2R. Why this 2R here is that we have already seen in through the limitation of the Blythe-Creep theory, if the downstream piles are not deeper compared to the intermediate or upstream piles, they are not effective. They are not effective. So it is necessary that we need to provide a more depth for the downstream pile. Then what is this after retrogression? So downstream HFL after retrogression minus 2R you need to take. So what is this after retrogression? So what is retrogression? If you see the entire process of the flow of water in the stream or a river, how the bed shapes and the bed levels are changed. This is what is required to be understood. For example, if you have a river or a stream flowing over a period of time, how various levels will be. Number one is the original bed profile, wadi bed profile. Wadi bed profile is a profile maybe used in southeastern, southern Indian region, in fact, the Southeast Asian region, where you have the bed, original bed in an arid climate particularly. So this is the original bed of the river, Then there is construction of the weir. After constructing the weir, there will be deposition of the sediment on the upstream side of the weir. Because a weir is constructed, so this is a weir wall. Once there is a weir wall constructed, the water level rises and also the sediment gets started depositing. So the sediment is deposited in the upstream of the weir. Then the sediment is picked up from the bed downstream of the weir here also. Then eventually the bed or body has a new stable bed profile. Then sediment is carried over the weir and downstream bed profile is restored back. This is what is the retrogression. So once the weir is constructed, there will be change in the bed levels. There will be change in the bed levels because of the sediment deposition. After few years, it gets stabilized. This is what is called the retrogression. So downstream HFL after retrogression minus 2R gives you the level of the bottom of the downstream pile. Initially, though this data is not known about the retrogression, appropriate values may be assumed based on the practice. So now we have arrived at several levels. This is the first important part of the design of a weir. We have fixed several levels. What is known to us? The downstream HFL is known, downstream bed level is known, and flood discharge also is known. Maximum flood discharge is known. So based on the maximum flood discharge, we have calculated length of the waterway. Once you get the length of the waterway, then substituting that you are getting the discharge per unit width. Once the discharge per unit width is known, substituting here the head over the crust H can be computed. Once you get the H value, we have arrived at different levels: point level, height of the crust level, and level of bottom of the upstream pile, level of the bottom of the downstream pile have been arrived at. The first part, arriving at various levels, has been finished. The second step is weir wall is to be designed. What is this weir wall? Maybe a masonry wall or maybe a concrete wall, having certain width at the top and certain bed width, both. Okay. Usually the bed width would be different from, the top width. That is the usual thing, because as the depth from the free surface is increasing, more and more water pressure will be there. So necessarily we need to provide more bed width at the bottom of the weir wall. Okay. After designing the weir wall, it must be stable, it must be safe. So the following parameters are to be checked, stability checks are to be taken up. Number one is that when the upstream water is at the crust level or at the top of the crust shutter with no flow, it must be safe. And the weir wall must be safe. After designing, after arriving at the values of A and B, the top width and bottom width of the weir, it must be checked for three stability requirements. First requirement is that there is water on the upstream side, and the water is there up to crust level, and there is no flow to the downstream portion. There is no flow to downstream portion. The weir wall must be safe. It must be safe. Second condition is that when the water passes over the weir, so naturally, when more water is coming during the flood period into the river, the excess water over and above the crust level flows to the downstream portion. So when the water passes over the weir at the maximum discharge with the weir completely submerged, then also it must be safe. Third condition to be checked is whether when the water passes over the weir crust and the discharge takes place with a clear overfall. So it is passing over, but there is clear overfall. It is not submerged. It is not submerged. In that case also, the weir must be safe. So we need to test after arriving at the dimensions of A and B. We need to test for all the three safety parameters, the stability parameters, and it must be safe against all the three safety parameters. So the top width of the weir A, how do we calculate this? This will be decided based on three formulae, and the maximum of all the three will be taken. One is that small a, the top width. This is the top width of the weir wall. So the top width A would be equal to d by root rho. And d is the head over the weir. Rho is the specific gravity. Similarly, A is equal to 3 by 2 into d by rho, assuming a factor of safety for sliding to be equal to 3 by 2. Then A is equal to S plus 1. S is the height of the shutter. So above all the three, based on these three, the maximum will be usually provided as the top width. Coming to the bottom width, the bed width or the bottom width is to be determined from the stability consideration. The stability considerations we have seen 1, 2, 3. So for the case 1, when you have the water up to crust level and there is no water flowing, then you need to take the moment of all the forces which are acting on the section, accordingly arrive at the value of B. Similarly, case 2, when the water is passing over the weir at maximum discharge with the weir completely submerged. Once again, take that case and arrive at all the forces, moments, then arrive at the value of B. Third case is that when the water is passing over the weir crest and a discharge is taking place with a clear overfall on the downstream portion. For that case also, take the moments about the toe point of the weir and arrive at the value of B. So maximum of all the three values of the B is to be provided there so that the entire weir will be stable against all the three parameters. Okay, the top width A will be based on certain norms which are given 1, 2, 3. Okay, based on the stress criteria, based on the sliding criteria, values are given and arrive at the maximum of the three equations which are given, get the value of A. For getting the value of B, the bed width here, we need to take the moment of all the forces which are acting on this for three different conditions with respect to the toe, assuming that this value is B. Solve for it. Solve for the B. And the maximum value among all the three cases will be equal to the bed width of the weir wall. Okay, so the top width, the bed width, various levels have been arrived. If you look at the figure, the top width, the bed width, various levels like pond level, downstream floor level, upstream sheet pile bottom, and downstream sheet pile bottom level. All these things have been arrived. Now, the step 3 is calculation of this impervious apron. This is to be designed. Impervious apron. How do we fix the lengths on the upstream, lengths of the downstream of this floor are to be arrived. The length of this impervious apron shall be determined based on the Bliss creep length. We have the Bliss creep equation. L is equal to C into HS. HS is the percolation head, and C is the classification number, creep coefficient. Okay, and according to Bly, the value of C is equal to 18 for light sand and mud, C is equal to 15 for mica sand, and C is equal to 12 for coarse grained sand, and C is equal to 5 to 9 for gravel, sand, and boulders. So based on the type of the sand available in the foundation material, the value of C is to be chosen. Okay. Alternatively, Kosla's expression for the exit gradient also may be used. GE is equal to HS by D into 1 by pi root lambda, where lambda is a function of E alpha. Alpha is equal to B by D. B is the total length of the floor. So get the value of the total length of the floor B from this exit gradient. In a nutshell, thumb rules may be used to arrive at the total lengths on the downstream side as well as on the upstream side of the apron. Total lengths on the downstream side and upstream side of the apron, we make use of certain thumb rules. Length of the downstream impervious apron. So from this portion, what is the length of this impervious floor, pucka floor, what we say pucka floor, impervious apron is equal to 2.21 into C into square root of HS by 13 when we are providing the crust gate. If crust gates are not provided, 2.21 C into HS by 10. HS by 10. So here HS by 13, HS by 10, 2.21 into C. Okay, C is once again from the Bliss coefficient. Once you know the value of C based on the type of the sand, then HS, the percolation head, then you will be getting the length of the downstream apron. Similarly, upstream apron length can be calculated once you know the total length minus L1 minus total creep length already we have calculated. Okay, so from here L minus L1 minus B plus 2D1 plus 2D2. What is this D1 and D2? They are the depth of piles on the upstream side and depth of pile on the downstream side. So since the movement of the water particle will be all through along the upstream side and downstream side of the sheet pile, you are now taking 2 into D1, similarly 2 into D2. So B plus 2D1 plus 2D2 is to be subtracted from total L along with L1 so that you will get the upstream side impervious apron. D1 is the depth of upstream pile, D2 is the depth of downstream pile below the floor. L is the total creep length. So the total length of the downstream impervious apron plus the downstream pervious apron L3 is given to be 18C into square root of HS by 13 into Q by 75 with crust shutter, and 18C into square root of HS by 10 into Q by 75 with no crust shutters. You will be getting the total. Of this total, if L3 is already, if the impervious portion is already defined, then the remaining portion, of course, goes for the inverted filter as well as the launching aprons which are provided there. So fixing the length of the inverted filter as well as the launching apron is our fourth step. The inverted filter is provided immediately at the end of the downstream impervious apron to relieve the uplift pressure. The recommended length of this inverted filter will be 1.5 times D2. If D2 is the depth of downstream cutoff which is known, the length would be equal to 1.5 times D2. And this filter consists of 90 to 120 centimeter thick block stones placed on a graded filter 50 to 75 centimeter thick. The inverted filter is having 2 layers. You can see here in the figure, there are 2 layers. Okay, so there are 2 layers. So these 2 layers are placed one over the other. The layer 1, 50 to 75 centimeter thick, and layer 2, 90 to 120 centimeter thick block stones are placed. Okay, The total length of this inverted filter will be on the downstream side 1.5 times D2. After the inverted filter, a launching apron or a talus is provided for a length of about 2.5 times D2. If D2 is known, 2.5 times D2, a talus will be provided, okay, to protect the downstream pile from the scour holes progressing in the upstream direction. Big boulders which are placed side by side is the talus. Okay, so this is how a talus will be provided both on the upstream side as well as the downstream side. A launching apron after the inverted filter, a launching apron is provided. Okay. When the scour holes are formed, the stones of the talus settle in the holes and cover them. So Spring recommended that the launched position over a slope of 3:1, the apron must have at least a thickness of about 90 to 100 centimeters. 1 meter thick always will be good. Knowing the inclined length and thickness, the total volume of the stones can be calculated, and hence the thickness of the talus in the horizontal position for a length of about 2.5 times T2 can be determined. So the retrogression or lowering the bed levels in the early stages of the construction of 0.3 to 0.5 meters was observed at high flood levels, and about 1.2 meters to 1.2 meters is observed at low discharges. This is about the retrogression depths. A similar launching apron is provided on the upstream side with a horizontal length of about 2d1. D1 is the depth of the upstream cutoff. In between the launching apron and upstream impervious floor, black protection for a length of D1 is provided. Consists of a layer of clay, which shall be packed, a protective layer of rough stone or a concrete block of about 30 to 60 centimeters thickness. So you may observe here what are the various components. The weir wall, a weir wall provided with a crust gate. Then all this is the impermeable portion, apron. So from the downstream end of this weir wall, maybe ABCD is the total length of the apron provided on the downstream portion, impervious portion. Similarly, from upstream portion, this is the length which are provided with the sheet piles at this portion as well as the downstream portion. After this sheet pile, to give a good protection for this upstream and downstream sheet piles, inverted filters will be provided. The inverted filter on the upstream side, inverted filter on the downstream side, followed by the talus. This is how the whole structure of the weir would be provided. So once the structure is designed based on the above principles, this must once again checked for the cost loss. In the method of independent variables has to be used and check whether all the pressures are within the permissible pressures or whether the thickness provided is sufficient to take care of the pressure or not will be decided based on the cost loss theory. Okay, so this is how the design of a vertical drop weir and the design principles are taken up. Okay, so I stop here.